What's up, yo? Welcome to Your One Life. I'm your host, Kim Young Kim, and I'm super glad to have you as a listener today. If you're new here, I want you to know what this podcast is about. This podcast is all about teaching you from the greatest minds in the world, helping you in all aspects of your life, and showing you how to throw plenty of shade around your house and in your car to beat this summer heat. Is it October yet? Now, if you've been listening for a while, you're probably wondering why my podcast studio is taking so long to put together. Here's the deal. I have squatters in my house. I have squatters. My squatters are a bunch of stuff that I need to get rid of and organize better. And this is something I'm a bit ashamed to admit. The room that's going to be my podcasting studio is full of stuff. I use it as storage. And honestly, a lot of the stuff I need to throw out. Now, I'm personally not a hoarder. I've been a minimalist throughout most of my life. But when I bought a house, I started buying more stuff. And my rationale was, I need this for the house, right? So oftentimes I'd hop on Amazon.com. I'd go to Home Depot. I'd go to garage sales. Sometimes I would get free stuff. And stuff slowly started to accumulate. And during the pandemic, it got worse. I got worse, actually, because I was like a lot of people. I was trapped in my house. I was buying countless button-down shirts to look good on Zoom and skipping leg day. But jokes aside, yes, I was buying more stuff during the pandemic. Now, some experts say that the pandemic actually killed the minimalist movement, and I can see how that happened because I definitely bought more stuff in 2020 and 2021. Sometimes I bought stuff because I was like, man, this is such a great deal. I'd be stupid not to buy this stuff. And I kept buying some stuff I don't need and some stuff that I did need. But over time, I started to accumulate things. And the episode I wanted to do was based on the Marie Kondo book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. But as I started to try to tidy up, I realized that I have more work to do than just tidy up. I need to become more of a minimalist so I can actually tidy up well. And regarding my studio, yeah, there are things that I do need to buy. I need to buy a table. I need to buy more sound treatment. I probably should decorate some. I need an AC unit installed. But first, what I got to do is I got to get my room in order. So as it stands, I can't interview anyone right now because my studio isn't set up. And I have a few guests that are locked and loaded and ready to go. But my stuff is literally holding me back. Now think about this. You're taking a long journey on a boat. Now, what you got to do is you got to bring some stuff with you. And the stuff that you bring with you should help. But if you bring too much stuff, some stuff will hinder you. Some stuff will actually slow you down. And if you have too much stuff, you may not be able to leave the port. Now, some of y'all are saying this analogy is a bit of a stretch, but think about this. If you're like most people, sometimes you can't find something because you have so much junk in your drawers and other places. And the more stuff you have, the more stuff you have to go through to find the thing that you actually need. And oftentimes, the thing that you're looking for, you have it somewhere, but it's lost in the sea of your stuff. And so what you do is you buy a second one at the store, and now you have 2 nose hair trimmers. And you think, oh, that's great. That's efficient. 1 for each nostril. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you, you're probably not that coordinated. Now, not only have you spent money on this nose hair trimmer, but you've also spent time out of your life to go buy it, and time equals life. And it's costing you money, and it's costing you the very thing that your life is made up of, which is time. So here's how I dealt with this room up to this point. I put something in the room and I said, I'll deal with this later. I'll deal with this later. And it just started to compile. And now every time I look at the room, it feels like this Herculean feat. It's overwhelming. And I say to myself, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this in a weekend. And it's true. I won't. I watched the Marie Kondo series on Netflix. And some of those people took 60 days or more to get their house in order. Now, as I was looking at my stuff and going through it, I turned to my learnings from nonviolent communication, and I started asking myself, why am I not throwing this thing out? What are my feelings that are keeping me from taking care of this stuff? Well, one of the feelings that popped up was feeling guilty for wasting something. For me, it is sacrilegious to waste something. It's part of my upbringing, and it's also part of my nature. And I think about the things sitting in a landfill, and I hate waste. And I think to myself, someone could use this. And I hope I can find that someone to use it. I even do this when I meet people, particularly women that I'm interested in dating. But sometimes those women turn out to be a little too crazy for my liking. So if I can't date them, I ask myself, who could I hook her up with that likes crazy women? And I actually refer to myself as a dating app called Unhinged. My tagline is hooking you up with the PPP, which is the prison pen pals, which is a very untapped market in the dating field. So, much like these prison pen pals, I feel guilty. I feel guilty for throwing things out. And another thing is I feel happy when I meet a need. I feel happy when I give something to someone and they actually use it. Just the other day, my neighbors took 4 of my lamps, which I was getting rid of because I got new lights in my classroom. And I was super pumped to know that someone's going to use these lamps. And because that feeling of giving something to somebody is so satisfying, I continue to hold on to stuff, hoping to give it to people who will use the stuff. And I do this with my local Buy Nothing group, which if you don't know about Buy Nothing, it's actually a really cool idea that has spread worldwide. So basically how it goes down is there are Facebook groups for your local neighborhood, more than likely. And people give stuff away to each other and people help each other. And it is awesome. And really, it's about neighbors helping neighbors. Now, I've given away a lot of things through Buy Nothing, but I won't sit here and say that it's completely unselfish what I'm doing, because in the group, the more you give, the more prone that people are to give to you. And so some of it is fueled by altruism, and some of it, honestly, is just fueled by greed. But I do love giving things to people and helping them out. And I get rewarded by positive energy in my neighborhood when I put stuff out in the yard and, people take it and then they thank me later. And honestly, it's a rush for me. But one thing I've learned in life is your greatest strength is also your greatest weakness. And my desire not to waste and to help people is actually holding me back because sometimes I'm overdoing it. And when I started looking at my stuff, I started asking this important question from nonviolent communication. What are my needs? Well, right now, my needs are time. So instead of thinking to myself, it's wrong to waste things, what I need to do is say, that may be so, but it's even more wrong to waste time. Now, as I look back at my purchasing history, again, looking at my feelings, what were the feelings that were guiding my purchasing of this item? And once I have an item, what are the feelings that are guiding me holding on to them? These are all questions that I want you to ask yourself because it'll help you get to the bottom of it and help you to get rid of stuff you don't need so that you can prosper in life. Now, here's some good news. I got started on getting rid of a bunch of my stuff, and what I realized is one of my needs in order to do so was to get help. So I paid a guy in my neighborhood who comes to work for me sometimes, and we got to work unloading a bunch of stuff from the room to the curb. Most of the stuff got picked up by random people, and the rest of the stuff ended up at Goodwill. And the room looks a lot better now. It is still under construction, but it's a step in the right direction. All right, let me put a bow on that with a little wrap up. Yo, I done learned some lessons about my possessions, come straight through. And yo, I'm just stressing about the stuff that I done clutch. I know I got more than enough. It's holding me back, and that's a fact. I need to throw it out. Yo, I gotta shout from the rooftops how we got to simplify our lives, and that's just wise. I'm talking about things that you read by all the freaking time because you can't find it. You're all reminded of some things like your strengths can be your weaknesses. That's what I'm saying. So you don't need to be keeping it. That's what I'm saying all the time. your feelings and your needs is what you got to find so you could just throw it on now. If it don't spark a whole bunch of joy, and that's what I'm saying, because otherwise it's noise. I'm coming out the top, and that's how I go. Throw out your stuff, and then just go. Straight to the top, baby. That's where you're going. All right, so I am off my soapbox now. What I'm going to do now is actually talk about the documentary Minimalism. Now, the documentary was actually behind a paywall on Netflix, but it is now free on YouTube, and you should definitely check it out. The documentary chronicles the journey of two childhood friends, Joshua Fields Milburn and Ryan Nicodemus, who both became minimalists, and how minimalism improved their lives and how they went around and spread the message of minimalism. They also bring in a lot of experts from different fields to talk about how the consumer culture is ruining us. And it's a really great ensemble of people who are sharing why this message is so important. Now, one of the big ideas in the documentary is everything is set up to create consumers. And I find this very ironic that I'm dropping this on Amazon Prime Day, but maybe it was meant to be. But yes, everything is set up for us to consume because we live in this machine called capitalism, which is great and it beats the heck out of socialism, but it's also fraught with problems, particularly in the United States. And they point out in the documentary, it's a new phenomenon with the internet and online shopping that you can shop 24 hours a day, right? In the past, you could only shop when stores were open, but now, if you can't sleep, hop on Amazon, hop into the infinity pools, which if you don't know that term, it refers to the fact that certain things like social media, Netflix, and many other things are pools that are infinite, they never stop, and online shopping is definitely an infinity pool. If you added up the time I've looked at products online and gave me the number, I would be afraid to open that envelope because, oof, yeah. And I don't even have that much of a problem as many people, but I know that to some degree I do have a problem. And one of the problems with online shopping is how easy returns are. And why do they make returns easy online and in person? Because everything is built to make you a consumer. Now, in the documentary, they talk about renting or buying a house, and they say make sure whatever you do with housing, that you go for housing that fits your needs. Your needs, not your greeds. And oftentimes what happens when it comes to consumers is they do something just because they can. But you shouldn't do something just because you can. You could get a tattoo on your face of your own face. Yeah, you could do that. Doesn't mean you should, unless you're the biggest introvert in the world and you don't want people talking to you. But don't do stuff just because you are able to. And what they say in the documentary is the American template is not the only template. And the two gentlemen in the documentary are here to share a recipe. And some people want that recipe. Now, if you don't live in America, feel free to shake your head at us. And don't feel bad because sometimes we look in the mirror and we do it ourselves. Now, regarding housing, they say you can always rent a smaller apartment or a smaller house and you can always upsize later. Now, housing gets a little trickier, but remember, you do not own the house when you buy a house. The bank does. So they said in the documentary, don't spend all you can just because you've been approved for XYZ mortgage. Now, housing does get tricky because maybe you're planning to have a family or you're planning to start a cult. But once you buy a big house, realize that you will be super tempted to spend so much money furnishing your house because the empty space can be a little depressing. So here's a couple tips I came up with. Make one of your rooms a workout room, put yoga mats on the floor, lie to people and tell them you do yoga every day. That'll cover one room. And you can also cover a room by designating it as haunted. But remember with housing should not be more than 30% of your income. Now, some people have laid out criticisms about the minimalism movement because they're like, oh, these are just wealthy people problems. But here's the deal. You can get free stuff and fill your house with that free stuff. There's plenty of impoverished hoarders, and this is not just a rich people problem. This is a people problem. One cool couple that they spotlight in the documentary went from a 1,200 square foot apartment to a 420 foot square apartment. And they had 2 kids. And what they did is they actually utilized the space really well. And it's actually really sick how they had everything set up with beds dropping down and, just things converting into other things and items having multiple uses. And honestly, it looked like a big Pinterest board for a nerdy engineer that wanted to maximize their space. But it made that space work for them. And honestly, the only way to get ahead in New York City, I feel like financially, is to do something that extreme. Something else they mentioned in the documentary is you can always borrow stuff. I do this myself. I have a friend who has power tools, so guess what? I have power tools. And there was a woman in the documentary who would borrow dresses from her friends, which I think that's a little more challenging because then you got to find friends that are the same height and weight as you. But I think the moral of the story is only make friends with people who have stuff you need. Boom. Now, all jokes aside, here's a quote from the documentary that I really liked. One of the gentlemen said, "We are here to help you get less. Less stuff, less clutter, less stress, less debt, and less discontent. And we're also here to help you get more. More time, more relationships, more growth, and more contentment." And I don't know about you, but that statement is exactly what I need in my life. And at the same time, the guy said to an audience, hey, look, you don't have to be a monk. You don't have to be crazy. There's levels to this. In the documentary, there's one guy who only owns 51 things, and he put all of his 51 worldly possessions in 2 bags, which sounds crazy, but what's even crazier about that is this guy had an apartment full of stuff, a really well-paying job, all of the things, and that's what he decided to do with himself. Now, to me, that's a little too extreme, but for him, it worked. Now, there's this part in the documentary where Joshua Fields Milburn actually shows how he packs his underwear when he travels, and he goes, I have a stack of underwear, and what I do is I separate it with a special bright color to show me which pairs are clean and which pairs are dirty. And at that part, I threw up in my mouth. And I said to myself, I need a special wall to separate myself from anyone who does this. That's disgusting. But here's the deal. There are levels to this. You can be extreme. You can be less extreme. And one of the things that Ryan Nicodemus said while on tour is he said, if your books bring you joy, then keep your books. And that's tying into the whole idea that Marie Kondo talks about. If it sparks joy, keep it. It's not all about emptying your place of all your stuff. It's about just keeping the stuff that you need and also that brings joy. Now, at this point, some of you are thinking to yourself, yeah, dude, well, guess what? These guys don't have kids. And I don't have kids either. But I am an uncle. I do understand to some degree the stress of making your kids happy with stuff. I remember actually 3 years ago when it was Christmas time, my niece told me she wanted this Baby Yoda doll. So I went shopping in the combat zone, aka Walmart during Christmas time. And I was ready. I was ready to hurdle over soccer moms so I don't disappoint this kid. And when I found that Yoda doll, I felt so relieved. So I get it to some degree, not fully the way a parent does. And I also get it in the sense that when I go to the store, I'm just like you. I see things and I'm like, ooh, that's cool. How would that look in my house? A couple weeks ago, I was in IKEA to buy storage solutions, which is apparently a bad idea, according to Marie Kondo. And as I was walking through IKEA, I saw rugs and cabinets and all these cool things, and I was drawn to them. And I was drawn to them because the thing about shiny objects is they're shiny, and they draw us in by nature. But I had to restrain myself. I had to keep moving, and I had to fight the internal thing that causes consumerism. And that's one of the things that they say. that advertising is actually brainwashing us to play these status games, right? To try to be trendy, to look cool. And Light Naval Ravikant said, if you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. So how do you prevent yourself from playing stupid games? Well, one thing they said in the documentary is when you have something, you have to justify to yourself, does it add value? And also, does it add enough value to keep it? That's a very challenging litmus test, but it is one that will help you to get rid of your stuff. One thing they talk about in the documentary is because we are consuming, because we are practicing so much consumption, what that does is it makes people want to make more and more money so that they can keep up with their consumption. That oftentimes leads to people getting jobs that they can't leave because they had these golden handcuffs. But in the documentary, they're like, hey, if you simplify your life, you can actually take away your golden handcuffs. There's actually a lady with MS in the documentary who her and her husband realized that she wouldn't have to go to work anymore with all her pain if they could just simplify their life, and that's exactly what they did. Now, the point is not to not work. I mean, if you're in a lot of pain and you need to stay home, then yeah, maybe it is. But the point is to have a job that you actually enjoy and not feel like you have to work doing something you don't like just so you can have stuff. Because oftentimes that stuff prevents you from having freedom. And deep down inside, if you ask yourself, what do you really want? I think freedom is very, very high on everybody's list. And that also includes the freedom to go cool places, the freedom to have cool experiences, because that's what makes life meaningful and enriching. Now, after I watched the documentary, I came up with this idea that I had based on financial teachings I've learned. So figure out how much money you make an hour after taxes. And imagine you're at work and you're answering emails and you're dealing with crazy customers while biting your tongue and you're pretending to listen during meetings and you work for 3 hours. And then after that 3 hours, they hand you that thing that costs 3 hours of your wages. If they handed you that item that you just bought, would you be happy? Or at least not shake your fist and curse the air? So do the math, figure out how much money you make per hour, and ask yourself, is this item worth X amount of hours of my life? Now, another cool idea that was presented in Minimalism is Project 333, which is to only wear 33 items of clothing and jewelry for 3 months. Now, the people who did it were like, wow, you would be so surprised on how many different combinations of outfits I put together with just 33 items. It's a cool challenge to take on and something that will help you to simplify your closet. Now, a couple great ideas that I've heard from other people regarding practicing minimalism is every time they buy an article of clothing, like a shirt or a pair of pants, they have to give away or get rid of a shirt or pair of pants. That's actually a really great practice. And I think it would be even greater if you had a t-shirt gun and you gifted to random strangers on the streets when they least expect it. Now, one foundational idea that is presented in the documentary is this whole idea of utilizing mindfulness and meditation in order to fight consumerism, in order to fight your internal greed and your discontent. Because we are swimming and oftentimes drowning in consumerism. We can't help it. Advertising never stops. The average person is exposed to 5,000 ads a day. And that's hard to combat, honestly. And what they say in the documentary is you got to hide your wife, you got to hide your kids because they're coming for them. Here's a crazy stat that they dropped. In 1983, $100 million was spent to advertise towards kids. In 2006, it was $17 billion. In 2024, I'm sure it's more. And this is why it's so important to not have your kids in front of screens for many, many reasons regarding consumerism, regarding mental health. And if you're not familiar with the work of Jonathan Haidt, that's Haidt, check him out because he's doing very, very important work to help protect our kids. And screens are important because screens are interconnected to consumerism. They use content to sell to us. And that's how this machine chugs along. All right, let me wrap that up real quick. Yo, we need less. Less of the things that cause us stress. Less of the mess. We need more. More love, more freedom, more contentment. That's what I need to mention. Understand this. Shiny objects shine, but they don't glisten over time. So understand that you need to stay in line with the level of minimalism that is good for you. And that's what I'm saying. Pick up a clue because they are trying to brainwash you with this status game. It's insane. They want to keep you in chains with the spending that you're doing. Yo, I'm just moving to the direction of freedom. That's what I want to be seeing. That's what I'm speaking to the people so we could just go to a higher level. And I'm talking about meditation because that's the brain elevation that we need right now so we could put down the screens, so we could put down all the things that hinder us and rise on up. And that's what I'm saying. So take a sip from the cup, raise a toast, and understand right now life could be dope if you rearrange it, if you act quite different. And that's what I'm saying. That's a minimalism mission. So open up your ears and open up your eyes. And that's what I'm saying. So let's all rise. All right, so that's that. And speaking of rising together, I want to talk about how you can do this with your family. You can do this with your partner, your kids. And one of the things that they say in the documentary is your kids are watching. Do you want them to mimic what they're seeing? And as you take on this challenge of minimalism, if you do, understand that it's better to do something poorly than not at all. Now, in the documentary, they show this clip from Jimmy Carter, and he is issuing this very challenge to the people of America during the shortages of oil and gasoline and during tough times in his presidency. And he goes, look, we are worshiping consumption and indulgence, and we need to fight against this. But what happened when Jimmy Carter threw down this tough message to the people? The people didn't listen, and we voted him out. So maybe now is a time for you to be different. Maybe now is a time for you to figure out what is enough. And like what they said in the minimalism documentary, to do what's good for you and others and live intentionally with the one and only life you've been given. All right, so that is my summary on the minimalism documentary. I highly recommend that you check it out and share with me via social media any ideas that you found very helpful. By the way, you can connect with me on social media at Your One Life Podcast on Instagram primarily, and also I'm on LinkedIn if you want to find me there. All right, so that's all I got on the documentary Minimalism. If you are new here, then hit follow so you don't miss future episodes. And then if you've been listening, then write a review and give a rating too. Now, some of you right now are like, whoa, he has stooped to an all-time low to get listeners. And let me tell you something. Is it an all-time low or is it an all-time high? Just kidding. All right, but in all seriousness, hit the follow button, rate and review it. That does help with the show. And also, when I get my act together, which I feel like is going to be sooner than later, I am planning to get some of the best guests out there. And when it happens, you're going to be like, yo, that was worth the wait. All right, so that's all I got for this time. Hope you have a great couple weeks. I'll drop another episode in 2 weeks according to my regular schedule. So until then, take care of yourselves, and I'll catch you next time. How about that? All right, peace for now. Peace.